The world reacts to the death of Fidel Castro. Plus, Hillary Clinton's campaign joins in the effort to challenge the results of the presidential election. The election she lost decisively to Donald Trump. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. We are live throughout this hour covering both those breaking stories. Lawyers for Hillary Clinton now say they'll back an effort by Jill Stein to recount votes in Wisconsin and would also back recounts in two other critical states, Michigan and Pennsylvania. This despite Clinton singing a very different tune in the last debate when Donald Trump was asked about accepting election results. My opening statement on this very topic is just minutes away, and you won't want to miss it. But first, tonight, reaction is pouring into the death of Cuba's Fidel Castro. That reaction includes a very different take from President Obama, who offered his condolences to Castro's family and said that history would judge his impact on the world, and from President-elect Trump, who bluntly called Castro a brutal dictator. Here's Phil Keating with more reaction from Miami.
While Cuba is now in 9 days of state-imposed national mourning, here in Miami's Little Havana neighborhood, an absolutely unbridled celebration celebrating the death of Fidel Castro. Before sunrise, all day long, and now after sunset, thousands upon thousands of Cuban Americans have gathered here on the street in the heart of Miami's Cuban American population. Horns honking, cowbells ringing, pots and pans banging, Cuban flags flying, and smile after smile from ear to ear. President Obama released a statement, quote, "History will record and judge the enormous impact of this singular figure." Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump saying, quote, "While Cuba remains a totalitarian island, it is my hope that today marks a move toward a future in which the Cuban people finally live in the freedom they so richly deserve." An idea eagerly shared by all of these Cuban Americans as well as their parents for decades. This is more than 50 years they have been hoping Fidel Castro would just go away. Well, Fidel Castro is now dead. Over the next couple of days, he will be cremated in Cuba, and then on Wednesday, his ashes will be taken on a long march from Havana out to Santiago on the east, which of course is the birthplace of Fidel Castro's communist revolution so many years ago. Judge Jeanine?
Phil Keating, thanks so much. And more on the death of Fidel Castro and the future for Cuba and the United States throughout the hour. But first, my opening statement. Breaking tonight, Hillary Clinton's campaign announces it will join Green Party candidate Jill Stein's presidential vote recount in 3 pivotal states, even though Hillary Clinton has already conceded the election. This almost 3 weeks after the presidential election was called for Donald Trump. This after Democrats were horrified when then-candidate Donald Trump, in his last debate with Clinton, wouldn't commit to accepting the election results, simply saying he would look at it at the time and keep us all in suspense. And Hillary's response to that? Take a listen.
That's horrifying. That is not the way our democracy works. We've been around for 240 years. We've had free and fair elections. We've accepted the outcomes when we may not have liked them. And that is what must be expected of anyone standing on a debate stage during a general election. I, for one, am appalled that somebody who is the nominee of one of our 2 major parties would take that kind of position.
Appalled. And she then doubled down on the outrage, causing some to actually protest.
He said something truly horrifying. He became the first person running for president, Republican or Democrat, who refused to say that he would respect the results of this election. That is a direct threat to our democracy.
And even though she couldn't come out election night and concede, and we now find out that President Obama told her to concede, the next day, when she does concede, says, we have to accept the results and look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. Okay, Hillary, now that Donald Trump is looking to help you heal, looking to help heal the nation, would it be fair to say, to use your own words, it's time to give Donald Trump his chance to lead? And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And joining me now is New York Republican Congressman Chris Collins, who is the congressional liaison to the Trump transition team and also sits on the executive committee of that transition team. All right, first of all, Congressman Collins, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you, Jeanine.
Were you as shocked as I was today to hear that the Clinton campaign that said that we now have to get behind President-elect Donald Trump says, gee, we're going to join in this recount? What did you think of that?
Nothing surprises me about Hillary or Bill Clinton. Let's face it, it's always been Clinton family first. And, this is a person who lied to the American public, lied to the Congress, much like her husband did. And so to lie on a debate stage and to try to turn that debate question, which we all have to realize they never asked her that question. Her response spoke for itself. But the liberal press didn't even ask her the same question they asked Donald Trump. But nothing surprises me about the Clintons. The liberal Democrats, who I can tell you, going back to D.C. after the election, boy, talk about eating crow, eyes down, shoulders shrugged, totally can't quite believe what hit them on election night. But there we went with Obama's legacy now, $20 trillion in debt in ISIS, and there won't be much other than that.
Okay, so here we are, Congressman, almost 3 weeks from the election, and they say, okay, we've got these 3 pivotal states, and even though I said that we need to look forward and, we need to accept Donald Trump as the president, I'm going to pull back on that one. But let's talk about those 3 pivotal states. My understanding is they're going to start with the recount in Wisconsin. All right, so they start with that recount, and what are we talking about? In Wisconsin, we're talking about a grand total of, I have it right here, 10 electoral votes. So let's assume that they're close and they're not in Wisconsin. That's not going to bring her up to what she needs. If they recount in Michigan, it's still not going to bring her up to what she needs. And in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is 70,000 votes ahead of Hillary Clinton. So why are they doing this? Aside from the fact that you can't believe anything they say, what is the motivation behind this?
Oh, I can tell you, they are ginning up the crowds, the protesters. They don't want to make America one again. I mean, I think this is a concerted effort in order to do everything but make America one again, which Donald Trump is going to do. He's taking and making the right statements. No, this is not about unifying our country. This is about the liberal Democrats and the Clintons doing what they can to make sure we don't unite behind Donald J. Trump, our president-elect. To me, it's disgusting. It's not surprising. But let's also remember, we're going to get past Wisconsin, and he's going to keep those 10 electoral college votes.
Of course.
At which point, even if, and it won't, even if something happened to Michigan and Pennsylvania, he's still our president. So, I mean, this is a fool's errand, but I think there's an edge to this, and it's not healthy for America. And I think other Democrats should get on board and call this out for what it is. It's the Clintons trying to keep our nation divided.
Well, Jill Stein, the third-party candidate, I mean, she barely got, I think, 1% of the vote, and she wants a recall? I mean, why would someone who gets 1% of the vote want a recall? Why? Because she wants to collect some money. I mean, so it seems to me.
Well, and I'm just, again, where we're trying to unite our country, they're trying to make sure we stay divided, that Donald J. Trump doesn't come into office on the wave that he should be. I called it the Trump tsunami. But this is wrong on every level. President Obama should call them out for it. He should be saying, enough of this. It's time to unite our country. But then again, he's the most divisive president who has disserved our nation for 8 years. So don't expect him to say it either.
And do you think that one of the possible reasons or one of the strategy behind this ridiculous attempt is to kind of shake the confidence of the electors before they meet? I believe it's on the 18th of the Electoral College, or maybe to get some of the electors to break away?
I can't even conceive of that one. No, I think, Jeanine, it's as simple as the liberal Democrats wanting to keep our nation divided. When President-elect Trump said, "One America, make America one again," they're trying to fight against that, which is, democracy and our country, and they should be ashamed of themselves for it. They need to stop this nonsense, but they're not going to. I mean, the rules don't apply to them. You and I know this. The rules don't apply to these liberal Democrats.
And here's the bottom line, Congressman. Americans voted for Donald Trump far and away in terms of the Electoral College. I mean, there's no question about the fact that he will be our president on January 20th.
Thank heavens.
Thank you.
That's what we have to be thankful for this Thanksgiving.
All right. Congressman Chris Collins, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Yes, always good to be with you, Jeanine.
All right. Joining me now is an attorney with Brown and Weintraub in Albany, New York, and outside counsel to the New York State GOP, Jeff Bewley. And I might add, Jeff, you were one of the key players in the 2000 election in Florida, actually counting those Chads in that historic recount. But, Jeff, when they talk about the recount from 2000 in Florida, there was a question of, I think, 500 votes that were in question in Florida, whereas in Pennsylvania, the difference between Clinton and Donald Trump is 70,000 votes. Are these people kidding?
Well, Judge, nice to see you again. Yes, you're correct. The spread in Pennsylvania is actually 1.2%, which is much higher of a margin than any recount in modern history has been able to overturn. And in fact, there's been a bit of a misnomer that's been perpetrated by the press that we are currently recounting the 3 closest states. But we're not recounting the 3 closest states. We're not even recounting the 2 closest states. What we are recounting the 3 states that Donald Trump with the smallest margins of victory. Michigan, he won by 0.3%. He won Wisconsin by 1%, and as we already said, Pennsylvania by 1.2%. But Hillary Clinton won New Hampshire by 0.4%. So New Hampshire is closer.
Maybe we ought to have a recount of New Hampshire.
That's right. So I think there's a good argument to be made that Jill Stein, Hillary Clinton, and the left only want to recount Donald Trump votes.
Interesting. All right, and maybe we should have a recount in Nevada and Virginia and Minnesota and every state that she allegedly won, if that's the game we're playing. But Jeff, look, it's my understanding that you're going to be one of the people headed out to Wisconsin this week, that as soon as the filing fees are paid on Tuesdays, the recount starts on Thursday. Is that correct?
That is possible, yes.
Okay, and that how is it done? Is the recount done by machine, or is it going to be something that's done by hand?
No, it's going to be done by hand, and it's my understanding that in Wisconsin they use different types of machines in different jurisdictions. There's basically 2 types of machines. The optical scan machine, which is where you go in and fill out an oval on a paper ballot, and those can then be rechecked manually. Then there are what they call DREs, which are like ATM-type machines. And some of those have paper receipts and some don't. So some of those can be checked against the results, and some will not be able to.
All right, and so when this begins, is it if some of it is a manual recount, is it possible that this goes beyond the 18th of December, which is when the Electoral colleges meet?
Yeah, well, the Electoral College meets on the 19th, But more importantly, by federal law, all the states have to report their results to Congress by the 13th. So the 13th is actually the drop-dead date. So that makes it even tougher. And I can tell you, I was counting ballots in a New York State Senate race last week, and I was doing it for 3 days, and we only counted 2,400 votes in 3 days. So a lot of this is going to depend upon how much resources these local counties can put into this. But the more resources, the more cost to the county.
Right.
And then the higher the fee that will have to be paid.
And, you know, the shame of all this, Jeff, is looking at the numbers. It's not, you know, unless all 3 states are called for Hillary Clinton, the woman who said it's time to look to the future for Donald Trump and give him a chance, nothing's going to happen, and it's just a divisive tactic. Correct?
Correct. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Clinton and Stein attorneys and volunteers, how they proceed at the counting tables in Wisconsin next week. If they are proceeding expeditiously, it's possible they're acting in good faith. If they're slowing things down and making a lot of objections, then it's going to be a question of what's their intent. Are they trying to prevent a state from being certified and trying to prevent that state from sending its electors to the Electoral College?
Exactly. All right. Jeff Bewley, always good to have your advice on all of this. Thanks for being with us. And more on the death of Fidel Castro next. I'm going to talk about the different political reactions from both sides of the aisle with GOPAC Chairman David Avella, and I'm going to get his take on today's decision by Hillary Clinton to join in the recount effort. Justice rolls on in a moment. Continue to follow 2 big stories, the death of Fidel Castro and Hillary Clinton campaign joining in the recount effort in 3 states. Joining me now with a reaction to both is GOPAC Chairman David Avella. All right, good evening, David. Let's talk about Castro and the 2 different reactions that we have with respect to his death. One is from President Barack Obama, saying basically that history will be the judge of you know, his legacy, and Donald Trump being a little more blunt about Fidel Castro is dead. What do you think his death is going to mean to the U.S.-Cuba relations?
Well, Donald Trump could have come out and said, one less predator to drain from the swamp. And it will be his economic policies and his efforts diplomatically to help bring prosperity to the Cuban people and hopefully move them closer to a democracy. But look, Judge, it's been a tough month for the Democrats. First, they lose the election, and today they lost their inspirational idol on economic policy with the death of Fidel Castro, so you can understand why they're a little bummed out right now.
Well, you know, he is certainly one who was a brutal dictator, someone who, you know, if anybody remembers the Cuban Missile Crisis. But isn't it true that Fidel Castro has kind of been out of it for a while? His brother Raul is running the place. But when Obama decided to, you know, reinstall relations between the United States and Cuba, he didn't call for the release of any of the prisoners who were being withheld, who were being imprisoned unfairly. What did we get out of that resumption of relations?
Well, those are great questions, and even to your point about we don't really know who has been running Cuba the last couple of years, but we have a chance to reset this, and that's why Americans can be optimistic. If you hear what Donald Trump said, you could tell he was very much in line with our past presidents who have been fighting the Castro regime and who understand the strategic importance of Cuba being having good relations and the U.S. having good relations with Cuba, given how close they are to our border. But yet you can't allow a dictator to run the show because you can't count on them. Well, and hopefully we're headed for better times with the passing of Castro and the election of a new president who wants a ally in Cuba, but isn't going to allow a dictator to push us around.
Well, there's no question about that. And, you know, I think that with some of the new additions or the nominations of the Trump team, I mean, tapping General Mike Flynn, national security, and some of the other announcements, Mike Pompeo, CIA, Jeff Sessions, AG. I mean, it's going to be a different game totally. But I want to move along. What's your reaction, David, to the Clinton campaign saying they're now going to join Jill Stein, that 1%er, in the recount? And I got to read this to you. Clinton campaign counsel, I think his name is Elias, said that they didn't find any irregularities in the campaign itself, in the numbers, but they just wanted to be involved just to make sure that everything was pretty much on the up and up. What does that tell you? Why is Hillary getting involved in this recount?
Democrat operatives need jobs. When you have the White House, you have both majorities in the Senate and the House. You have 34 governors. You have 68 of 99 state legislative chambers. There's not a whole lot of place for Democrat operatives to go and find work, so let's try to extend the election a little longer. But to a bigger point, and this is why Donald Trump, as he continues to build his cabinet and do his transition, he needs to set the standards and look for the backgrounds that he wants. He doesn't need to be listening to losing Democrats and media elites who are disingenuous in their advice. Look, nobody had a problem when President Obama elected or nominated a billionaire who had run a company to be Commerce Secretary. Now it's scandalous that Donald Trump's thinking about it. Nobody had a problem when Bill Clinton put Hillary Clinton in charge of the health care system in his first administration. But yet, you know, heaven forbid any member of the Trump family have any advice for the dad. Just as President Kennedy made his brother the Attorney General, and yet, you know, Donald Trump gets advice from his son-in-law, and all of a sudden that's grounds for impeachment. Well, Donald Trump needs to keep going about doing what he's doing, which is building his team to get focused on his agenda, which is getting the economics of our country in line and keeping Americans safe.
David Avella, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. And still ahead tonight, I'll look back at the presidential campaign that made history, Donald Trump's unprecedented run to the White House. But next, the gloves are off. Former Bush advisor Brad Blakeman and syndicated radio host Chris Hahn are on the panel tonight. Hillary's recount effort and life after Castro for Cuba and the U.S. We're talking about it all next. Stay with us.
Good evening and live from America's News headquarters, I'm Jackie Ibanez. Another day of heavy fighting for Iraqi troops battling to retake Mosul from ISIS terrorists. Troops fired mortars and machine guns on ISIS positions. Iraqi forces are getting artillery and air support from the U.S.-led coalition. More than 1 million civilians are still believed to be trapped in Mosul tonight. Iraqi's military says 16 civilians were killed overnight. The UN says at least 73,000 Iraqis have managed to escape from Mosul since the government's offensive started last month. And the holiday shopping season off to a record-breaking start. Listen to this. Black Friday shoppers spending more than $3 billion online. That's a 20% increase over last year. And now comes Cyber Monday. A number of stores say they're expanding their sales for a week. Some of the best deals, those are HD TVs, gaming computers, and cameras. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
A lot of breaking news tonight on this Thanksgiving Day weekend, so let's get right to it with my political panel, Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Brad Blakeman, and syndicated radio show host and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, Chris Hahn. All right, guys. Brad Blakeman. Okay, so Fidel Castro dies. Was he in charge anyway, Brad?
No, Fidel wasn't in charge. He was ailing for some time. His brother's in charge, including a whole host of other relatives of the Castro family.
Were they all communists too?
Of course.
Okay.
Look,
so what's going to change,
Very little is going to change.
What's
going to change? You know what? It remains to be seen, but I don't think much, because these guys have been hanging on to power for decades. They're not gratuitously going to give it up. And we need a strong president like Donald Trump to not give away the store, especially in our own hemisphere, and revisit some of these awful executive orders that the president has done in order to cozy up to dictators.
Okay, so why did the president need to cozy up to the dictators, Chris?
Oh, I don't think he needed to cozy up to the dictator.
Well, what did he get out of it?
And let me just point one thing out. What Dave Avella said in the last block. Democrats were not happy about Fidel Castro's reign. We're very happy to see him gone, and we want to see more people gone from that
President Barack Obama didn't sound that way. He said he wouldn't even criticize the guy.
Well, the overwhelming majority of the business community wants to see Cuba opened up to commerce in this hemisphere, so they have another place to do business, another place to trade. This actually gives President-elect Trump an opportunity to kind of walk back some of the things he said during the campaign. We'll see how that happens.
Walk what back? Maybe President Barack Obama ought to walk back what he said about letting history decide how we're going to see. Look, this guy has incarcerated, he's killed tens of thousands, if not 100,000 people. He was a dictator. He was brutal. He's got people incarcerated. And when we resumed relations, we didn't even call for the release of those people.
Thank God, Judge. Tonight, instead of being in the presidential palace, he's in a small cell in hell somewhere getting tortured. Good for him.
Oh, I'm glad you get to say that. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about, what's with the Clinton campaign. Chris, I'll start with you and then go to Brad. Why are they jumping in on this recount? Even their lawyers said, we don't see anything unusual, but we're going to go in there to make sure it's fair. What are you, they judges now?
So from the people I talked to close to the campaign said that, look, I think they're there mostly to put a check on Jill Stein to make sure she doesn't cause a constitutional crisis. There's not a lot of trust from mainstream Democrats for Jill Stein. So I don't think the Clinton campaign's in there for any dubious purpose. I think they're there to kind of make sure that the process moves smoothly and it gets over with quickly. We know, everyone knows, it's going to be very hard for her to make up the margin in Pennsylvania, even if she makes up the margin in Michigan and in Wisconsin. So we want to make sure we avoid any crisis here.
So, Brad, if I understand what Chris is saying is the Clinton campaign doesn't really trust this 1%er Jill Stein, so they're going to go back on her word when she says, let's give Donald Trump a chance and look toward the future. So they're going to go in there and judge it all. You know what I think? I think that what they said was something about we're going to make sure the Russians weren't involved. What do you think, Brad?
Look, I think this smells real bad, and I think Jill Stein is a straw woman for the Clinton campaign. This is nonsense that somehow Hillary is just making sure that she's being honest. There is no honesty here. And by the way, Judge, you know how much it costs to run a recount. Where are they getting the money to run the recount? She couldn't even run her campaign, and suddenly she has millions of dollars for a recount? Look, I would ask Chris to find out which one of his Democratic friends is bankrolling this recount. Is it George Soros? Brad, is it somebody else? Who is it?
No, Brad, you know that there are a lot of people very upset about this election on the left, and they were very susceptible to raise money from her. Yeah, and we accept that. I think that most mainstream Democrats accept that, willing to give him the benefit of the doubt until he doesn't deserve it anymore.
He doesn't
So why
deserve
doesn't Clinton get on the phone and put a stop to it?
He had 306 electoral votes. She had 232. Even if they switch Wisconsin and Michigan, he still wins. And they're not going to switch Pennsylvania because there's no 70,000 votes that are going to flip the other way. Let me tell you what the rumor is. The rumor is they want to go after the absentee ballots because most of those are Republican, and that's really involving in the biggest number, the elderly and the disabled. How's that from Democrats?
The time to challenge the election results is long past due. Those who hesitate are lost. I don't think that the Clinton campaign is primarily involved with this. I do think that Jill Stein is using this to raise money for herself and her organization. And I think that's why the Clinton campaign and mainstream Democrats are going to make sure there is a smooth process that is not delayed by Ms. Stein.
Well, why didn't they say that, Brad? If they're there...
Well, because they wanted to go on, Judge, clearly, and Hillary Clinton could have put a stop to this in 2 seconds by going on television, holding a press conference and saying she has no part in this, she wants it to stop. The election results have been certified as far as she's concerned by the election. That will be certified soon by the electors, and this is nonsense. She accepts the verdict of the American people, and let's move on.
Well, hey, just because we're working on Thanksgiving weekend doesn't mean she's working on Thanksgiving weekend, Brad, so give her a break. Let's see what she says on Monday or Tuesday.
Who? Hillary?
Hillary.
Give her a break. She jumped into the fray today. I'm not giving her a break.
She did not. She did not jump into the fray today.
The Clinton campaign would not have gotten into the fray without Miss Clinton's permission.
Absolutely.
Come on, Chris.
We'll see about that.
Come on.
We'll see about
come on.
that.
All right. It's ridiculous. And you know what? It is advancing the division that Donald Trump is clearly, especially when he says he wants to help her heal. What he's trying to do is bring the country together, and she's in the middle of this divisive, let's split everybody apart. But Brad Blakeman, Chris Hahn, that's why we want to hear from you. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys. A look back at Donald Trump's historic campaign coming up. Plus, I get a prominent millennials take on President-elect Donald Trump and the transition so far.
Channel 115.
Welcome back to Justice. President-elect Trump and his transition team are hard at work choosing the new administration. So let's get reaction from a Trump supporter, the founder of Turning Point USA, and author of Time for a Turning Point, Charlie Kirk, who joins me now. All right, good evening, Charlie. We talked about millennials during the campaign, and now that the campaign is over, where did millennials fall in this election as compared to where they were in the last election with Obama and Romney?
Yeah, it was quite remarkable. You look at the Hillary Clinton modeling. They really anticipated they would win 60 to 65% of college voters, and they were really shocked on election night where they only won by about 8 to 10%. Barack Obama was able to win 65 to 70% of college voters. In fact, in Wisconsin, Donald Trump won 45% of college voters to Hillary Clinton's 43%. That was one of the difference makers in Wisconsin. And look, this recount stuff is a bunch of nonsense. And they're going to go back and they're going to go through all the college districts. And Hillary campaign was completely stunned to learn that the margin with millennial voters is a lot smaller than they anticipated. It was one of the reasons why she lost. She was not able to excite younger voters.
Interesting. All right. And now I want to ask you about something that has created what seems to be some friction, and that is the potential for Mitt Romney being named Secretary of State. Now, I had put this question on my Facebook and got almost 7,000 responses. And the responses were almost unanimously, we love Donald Trump, we support Donald Trump, but, almost to a person, the guy's a bum, meaning Romney. Many of us spent the better part of the year defending Trump from Romney and his sabotage attempt. I can't wrap my head around this. I can't in my heart believe he has the same agenda as Trump. What do you think about this?
Right. So without getting into any attacks with Romney or Trump, I think there's a lot of decisions here and a lot of conversations being made that, we're not really privy to. Right. However, with Ronald Reagan in 1980, one of the lessons that he learned post-presidency and his advisors learned was trying to put political rivals in high positions ended up not being a very good decision for him. In fact, when H.W. Bush took the presidency in '88, those same advisors tried to undo a lot of what Reagan successfully put forth in the 1980s. So my personal advice, my observation is be very careful about putting political rivals in high places. I think there's some positive about it, showing that you can actually bury the hatchet and put together a team of rivals. At the same time, someone who is not there since the beginning, loyalty really speaks volumes. And so I can see the conflict here. I think Romney possesses a lot of positive attributes that would make him a terrific diplomat and statesman. But at the same time, there's something to be said. There's some hesitation to not have that sort of loyalty that is needed to really put together a successful team moving forward for the Trump administration.
The country certainly needs to heal, and I think the optics may have been enough without the appointment, but obviously Donald Trump knows a lot more than you and I do. Anyway, Charlie Kirk, good to have you with us again tonight. Thanks so much. All right, and the campaign that shocked the world. We'll take a look back next.
DaytonFireplace.com.
They said it wouldn't last. Now, nearly a year and a half after his memorable announcement to run for the highest office in the land, and tens of millions of votes later, the man so many didn't take seriously is our new president-elect and poised to lead this great nation. We here at Justice had a front row seat to this historic campaign that has changed the face of the country. Take a look.
It was the grand entrance that kicked off the campaign that would change the way we look at politics. A grand entrance immediately followed by the first in a long string of frank, no-nonsense talk no one had ever heard from a serious candidate before.
When Mexico sends its people They're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
Donald J. Trump's was the bare bones, tell it like it is, politically incorrect campaign that almost everyone called a flash in the pan. Winning the White House was a pipe dream, said the pundits. But through it all, the straight talk kept coming. Ruffled feathers be damned.
Then he apologized. And then he apologized like a little baby, like a disgusting little weak, pathetic baby.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
But behind the headline-making one-liners, the late-night Twitter smackdowns, and the occasional war with the press lay a real message.
I'm looking to make America great again, not credit.
A message that resonated with everyday Americans. Blue-collar voters tired of watching American jobs ship overseas. Tired of a rapidly left-leaning countries leaving the everyman behind. And the man quickly emerging as the Republican frontrunner saw them, heard them, and embraced them.
What is the movement? It's a movement of people that are tired of seeing stupid decisions made in our country that are destroying our country, where our companies are leaving, our jobs, our people are being fired. It's a group of people that are tired of stupidity. It's a group of people that want common sense, and they want to win again. We don't win anymore.
One by one, the traditional GOP candidates, the ones who were supposed to win, were vanquished, some in more memorable fashion than others.
This little guy has lied so much about my record.
Did you ever see a guy sweat like this?
It's Rubio! Lion Ted. What's your name? My name's Lion Ted Cruz. You have to spell it right. It's Lyin apostrophe Lion Ted. Jeb Bush, we call him low energy.
As he stood victorious, holding the mantle of the Republican Party, Donald Trump started the uphill battle against the face of the Democratic Washington establishment, pledging all along to keep proving the naysayers wrong and keep doing it like no one ever has.
I beat a lot of people that are good people, and now I have one left. It'll probably be crooked Hillary. She's crooked as you get. And it'll probably be her, and we're going to see what happens.
What we saw at first was more of the same. The polls, the pundits, the people paid to read the tea leaves, all predicted history. The first female president, ready to continue the 8-year push to the left. But much of America had a different history-making vision in mind. An America that reached out to those who felt forgotten. And quickly, the race that wasn't supposed to be a race became, well, a race.
I have a message for all of you. The crime and violence that today afflicts our nation will soon, and I mean very soon, come to an end.
Then, a gift from the most unlikeliest of givers. A rallying cry from the very person who was already planning her move back to the White House.
You could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
The basket grew until it burst. Hard-working, angry, frustrated, and now insulted American voters. Fired up and ready to make history.
Such a nasty woman.
And through it all, though he added substance, specifics, and even a first 100-day action plan to the rhetoric, Donald Trump never stopped being Donald Trump.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
And as progressives and elites gathered in New York and across the country on election night, ready for a presumptive party, it was the forgotten, the angry, the working class who wound up emerging from the shadows to dance into the night. Those at the back of the line now up front, the movement now center stage. America stands at the crossroads of one of the most critical times in its history, with a president unlike any of its previous 44 ready to lead. The improbable, colorful ride that started on a golden escalator has finally reached the White House.
We'll be right back. That's it for us tonight. Remember, you can friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Judge_Jeanine. And this holiday season, if you're looking for a great gift, pick up my book, He Killed Them All, Robert Durst and My Quest for Justice. On sale now in bookstores and online. Go to Amazon. Thanks so much for watching. Now, if you didn't buy it last year, you can buy it this year. The guy still hasn't been tried yet.